Emma, please. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen. The voice crackled through her phone at 2:47 a.m. It was Jake, her boyfriend who was supposed to be at a Halloween party across town. But the GPS tracker she'd secretly installed showed his phone was inside the old Ravencroft Manor. The same abandoned house where 3 teenagers vanished exactly 10 years ago. The same house everyone in town avoided. The same house Jake swore he'd never go near after what happened to his brother. Her hands trembled as she listened to his ragged breathing. Emma, it wasn't supposed to be real. We were just trying to scare you. But now, oh God, now it knows we're here. The line went dead. Emma stared at her reflection in the darkened window. Tomorrow was Halloween. Tonight she had 2 choices: call the police and sound crazy, or drive to that cursed house herself. She grabbed her car keys. Some people say love makes you stupid. Maybe they're right. But when someone you love is screaming your name from inside your worst nightmare, you don't think, you just move. What Emma didn't know was that Jake's prank had awakened something that had been waiting in that house for a very long time. Something that fed on fear, something that twisted innocent games into deadly traps. And by the time she pulled into that weed-choked driveway, 5 people were already inside, and only 2 would make it out alive. Before we go further, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what topic you want covered next. Your suggestions fuel this channel, and I read every single one. 6 hours earlier, Jake sat in Marcus's basement with 4 of his closest friends, all grinning like kids on Christmas morning. The blueprints of Ravencroft Manor were spread across the coffee table, stolen from the town hall archives by Marcus's older sister who worked there. Halloween decorations hung from the ceiling, casting twisted shadows across their faces. "She's going to lose her mind," Jake said, tracing his finger along the manor's layout. "Emma acts like nothing scares her. Remember last year when we took her to that corn maze? She laughed the whole time, called it cute." Marcus leaned back, cracking his knuckles. "That's because corn mazes are for children. This is psychological warfare." The plan was elegant in its cruelty. Emma had told Jake she'd be spending Halloween night alone, watching horror movies and judging them for their unrealistic scares. What she didn't know was that Jake had been planning this for 3 months. He'd recruited Marcus, the tech genius who could rig up cameras and sound systems anywhere. Then there was Lily, Jake's ex-girlfriend who'd somehow remained friends with both of them. She was the actress, the one who could sell fear like it was real. Daniel brought the props and special effects from his father's theater company. And finally, there was Rachel, Emma's best friend since childhood, who felt guilty about the whole thing but agreed anyway because she thought Emma needed to be brought down a peg. "The beauty of it," Lily said, painting fake blood on a white dress, "is that she trusts all of us. When she gets that call from Jake, panicking, begging for help, she won't question it. She'll come running." Rachel shifted uncomfortably. "You're sure this is just a prank, right? Like we're not actually going to hurt her or anything?" Jake shot her a look. "Rachel, come on. I love Emma. This is just about teaching her that fear is human, that she's not above it. After tonight, we'll all laugh about it. I'll probably propose to her next month, honestly." That made Rachel smile a little. She'd always thought Jake and Emma were perfect together, even if Emma's fearless attitude sometimes felt like armor she refused to take off. Maybe this would help her be more vulnerable, more real. Daniel rolled a canister of fog machine fluid between his palms. "So we set up at Ravencroft by 8. Cameras in every room, speakers hidden in the walls, the whole 9 yards. Jake, you'll be our man on the inside, the bait. You accidentally let Emma track your phone. She sees you're at the manor, you call her all panicked, and boom, she's on her way." "And when she arrives?" Marcus asked. "We let her walk through hell," Jake said quietly. There was something in his voice that made Rachel's stomach turn. Not cruelty exactly, more like obsession. Like he'd been thinking about this moment for so long that it had become more than a prank. It had become a test. Ravencroft Manor loomed against the October sky like a broken tooth. The group arrived just as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows that seemed to crawl across the overgrown lawn. The house had been abandoned since 1985, when the Ravencroft family disappeared overnight. Local legend said they'd been driven mad by something in the walls. Others claimed they'd performed a ritual that went wrong. Either way, the house had earned its reputation as the most haunted location in the county. Jake felt a chill as they approached the front door, its wood swollen and cracked with age. His older brother Tommy had snuck into this house on a dare back in high school. He'd come out 3 hours later, refusing to speak about what he'd seen. A week after that, Tommy had dropped out of school and moved to Alaska. He hadn't visited home in 7 years. Whenever Jake asked about that night, Tommy would just say, "Some houses remember things, that one remembers too much." But Jake pushed the memory away. That was just trauma response. Just his brother being dramatic. This was different. This was controlled. They had flashlights, phones, a clear exit strategy. Nothing could go wrong. Inside, the house smelled like rot and old secrets. Marcus immediately began setting up the equipment, drilling tiny holes for cameras, hiding wireless speakers behind moldy wallpaper. Lily disappeared upstairs to position herself in the master bedroom, where she'd play the role of a ghostly apparition. Daniel rigged the fog machines and set up motion-activated props, a rocking chair that would start moving on its own, doors that would slam shut, mirrors that would show distorted reflections. Rachel wandered through the ground floor, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Something felt wrong. Not scary wrong, but sick wrong. Like the air itself was contaminated. She found herself in what must have been the kitchen. On the wall, beneath layers of peeling paint, someone had scratched words into the plaster. "It feeds on pretending." "Guys," Rachel called out, but her voice seemed to die in the thick air. She reached out to touch the words, and the temperature dropped so suddenly her breath came out in visible clouds. That's when she heard the child laughing. Not from the speakers. Marcus hadn't activated the system yet. This was coming from somewhere deeper in the house, somewhere below. "Marcus!" she shouted, running back toward the main hall. "Marcus, we need to—" The front door slammed shut behind her. All of their phones went dark simultaneously. And in the sudden blackness, Rachel heard something that made her blood freeze. Footsteps. Multiple footsteps. Walking down from the second floor. But all 5 of them were on the ground floor. "Relax, that's just the motion sensors," Marcus said. But his voice cracked. He was frantically trying to reboot his phone. Nothing. The screen stayed black, even though it had been at full charge 2 minutes ago. Jake's heart started hammering. "Lily? That you up there?" No response. "Lily?" Jake started toward the stairs, but Daniel grabbed his arm. "Wait. Something's not right. My phone's dead too. All the equipment is dead. That's not possible. I had everything on independent battery packs." The footsteps continued, slow and deliberate. One step, pause, another step. Like whatever was coming down those stairs wanted them to hear it, wanted them to anticipate it. Lily's scream tore through the house. Not a playful scream. Not the kind she'd practiced for the prank. This was raw terror. The sound of someone whose mind had just broken. Jake bolted up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. The others followed, their flashlights creating chaotic patterns on the walls. They burst into the master bedroom and found Lily pressed against the far wall, her face pale as paper, pointing at the full-length mirror. "It showed me," she whispered. "The mirror showed me what I really look like." Jake looked at the mirror. He saw his own reflection. Normal. Nothing wrong. "Lily, what are you—" "Not your reflection." She cut him off. Her eyes were wild. "Mine. It showed me what I really am, what we all really are when we pretend to be something we're not." Marcus pushed past them, examining the mirror. "It's just old glass. Lily, you're freaking out over nothing. This is just pre-prank jitters or—" The mirror cracked. Not shattered. Cracked. A single line appeared down the center, and from that crack, something began to seep out. Not liquid, not smoke. Something in between. Something that moved with intention. Rachel backed toward the door. "We need to leave right now. This wasn't supposed to—" "The front door won't open," Daniel said from the hallway. "I just tried. It's like it's welded shut." That's when Jake's phone suddenly came back to life. Full signal. Full battery. It immediately dialed Emma's number without him touching it. He tried to hang up, but the phone wouldn't respond to his touch. Emma answered, groggy and confused. "Jake? It's almost 3 in the morning. Why are you—" Jake wanted to tell her it was a prank, that everything was fine, that she should stay home. But the words that came out of his mouth weren't his own. "Emma, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." The things seeping from the mirror began to take shape. 5 shapes, actually. Dark, twisted versions of each of them assembled from shadow and malice. Jake continued speaking, his voice his own, but the words controlled by something else. "Emma, it wasn't supposed to be real. We were just trying to scare you. But now, oh God, now it knows we're here." The line went dead. The phone clattered from Jake's hand. The 5 shadow figures stood before them, perfect dark reflections, and then they smiled with too many teeth. Marcus was the first to understand. "The house," he breathed. "It doesn't like people who pretend, people who fake fear, people who play games with things that should be taken seriously." The shadow version of Jake stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding stone. "You came here to create fear, to manufacture it, to pretend. This house was built on real fear, real suffering, real death, and now you'll learn the difference." The shadows lunged forward, and the screaming began. Emma's car screeched to a stop in front of Ravencroft Manor at 3:24 a.m. The house looked worse than the photos she'd seen online. A rotting monument to something that should have been torn down decades ago. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to call the police, to do literally anything except walk through that front door. But Jake's voice kept replaying in her mind. The terror in it, the desperation. She'd never heard him sound like that. Jake was the guy who made jokes during thunderstorms, who laughed off bad news, who approached life like it was all just a game he was winning. Whatever was happening in that house had stripped away every layer of his armor. Emma grabbed the tire iron from her trunk and approached the entrance. The front door hung open, creaking slightly in the wind. That was wrong. The door had been sealed shut for years, according to every urban exploration video she'd watched. Someone had opened it recently. "Jake?" she called out, stepping inside. Her voice echoed strangely, like the house was swallowing the sound and spitting it back distorted. "Marcus, Rachel, anyone?" The beam of her flashlight revealed a hallway that seemed to stretch longer than physics should allow. Wallpaper peeled in long strips, exposing water-stained walls covered in black mold. But there was something else underneath the mold. Marks. Thousands of tiny scratches forming words, repeated over and over. We pretended until we couldn't stop. Emma's hand tightened around the tire iron. She'd studied psychology in college, written papers on mass hysteria, and shared delusions. She knew how abandoned places could mess with people's minds, especially suggestible people who came looking for ghosts. This was just vandalism, probably done by the same teenagers who broke in here every Halloween to scare themselves. But then she found the blood. Fresh blood pooled near the base of the stairs. Too much blood. "Jake!" she screamed, abandoning caution. She took the stairs 3 at a time, her flashlight bouncing wildly. The second-floor hallway split in 3 directions, each corridor darker than the last. A sound stopped her cold. Crying. Quiet. Broken crying coming from the room at the end of the middle hallway. Emma ran toward it and threw open the door. Rachel sat in the corner of what must have been a child's bedroom, her knees pulled to her chest, rocking back and forth. Her clothes were torn, and her hands were covered in scratches. "Rachel!" Emma dropped beside her friend, checking for serious injuries. "What happened? Where's Jake? Where are the others?" Rachel's eyes were glassy, unfocused. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat, mechanical. "We pretended to be scared, so the house made it real. It showed us what we are underneath, the things we hide, the lies we tell ourselves. Rachel, you're in shock. We need to get you out of here and—" "You can't leave," Rachel interrupted, and now her eyes focused on Emma with laser precision. "The house won't let you leave until you face it too, until you stop pretending you're not afraid. Because you are afraid, Emma, you're terrified. You just hide it better than the rest of us. Emma felt something cold crawl up her spine. Where is Jake? Rachel's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. He's learning. They're all learning. The house is teaching them what fear really means. Not the fun kind, not the Halloween kind. The kind that breaks you from the inside out. A scream echoed from somewhere below them. Male. Definitely Jake. Emma bolted from the room, leaving Rachel behind. She didn't care about the psychology anymore. Didn't care about rational explanations. Something was hurting Jake, and she was going to stop it. The basement door stood open, exhaling cold air that reeked of earth and decay. Emma descended the wooden stairs, each step groaning under her weight. Her flashlight flickered once, twice, then stabilized. At the bottom, she found herself in a maze of rooms. Old servant quarters maybe, or storage cellars. The walls down here weren't plaster. They were stone. Ancient stone that predated the house above. Emma? Jake's voice came from the darkness ahead. Emma, thank God. I can't move. Something's holding me and I can't. She rushed forward, following his voice through a narrow corridor. And then she saw them. Jake, Marcus, Lily, and Daniel. All four of them suspended in the center of a large chamber, held in place by nothing visible. They floated 3 feet off the ground, their limbs spread like they were pinned to invisible crosses. Their eyes were open, but they weren't seeing the room. They were seeing something else, something inside their own heads that was tearing them apart. Marcus was whispering mathematical equations, faster and faster, like if he could just solve the right problem, he could logic his way out of this. Lily was crying silently, her lips moving in what looked like apologies. Daniel wasn't moving at all, just staring straight ahead with an expression of absolute surrender. And Jake. Jake was looking right at Emma, but his eyes held an emotion she'd never seen there before. Not fear. Worse. Shame. I'm sorry, he choked out. We did this to scare you. To prove you could be scared. To break through that wall you keep up all the time. But the house, or it knew. It knew we were the ones pretending. Emma's mind raced. The prank. They'd planned a prank. These were the people she loved, the people she trusted, and they'd conspired to terrify her. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. But underneath that betrayal, something else stirred. They were right. She did keep walls up. She did pretend nothing frightened her. After her parents died in that car crash when she was 12, after she'd spent 3 hours trapped in the wreckage listening to her mother's last breaths, she'd made a choice. Fear was the enemy. Fear was what paralyzed you when you needed to act. So she'd buried it so deep that sometimes she forgot it was there at all. The house had sensed her the moment she walked in. The girl who pretended fear didn't exist. And now it wanted her to remember. The shadows in the corners of the room began to move. They peeled away from the walls, taking forms that Emma recognized. Her parents. Not as they'd been in life, but as they'd been in death. Twisted. Broken. Accusing. You didn't cry at our funeral, the thing wearing her mother's face said. Everyone thought you were being so brave. But you weren't brave. You were pretending we didn't matter enough to cry over. Emma's knees buckled. The tire iron fell from her hands, clanging on the stone floor. That's not true, I love them, You locked us away, her father's shadow continued. Locked away the grief, the fear, the pain. Pretended you were fine. Pretended you were strong. But you're not strong, Emma. You're just really good at lying to yourself. The shadows moved closer. Emma could feel them now, cold fingers of doubt and repressed trauma wrapping around her throat. This was what the house did. It found the pretending, the masks people wore, and it ripped them away. It made you face what you'd been hiding from. But then something shifted inside Emma. Yes, she'd hidden her fear. Yes, she'd built walls. But she'd had a good reason. Those walls had kept her functional when grief tried to drown her. That armor had let her survive when survival was the only option. You're right, Emma said quietly, and the shadows paused. I do pretend. We all pretend. That's how humans survive trauma. We compartmentalize, we adapt, we put on masks when the real face is too broken to show the world. She stood up, meeting the eyes of her parents' shadows. But pretending isn't always lying. Sometimes pretending to be strong makes you actually strong. Sometimes faking courage until you feel it is the bravest thing you can do. The house groaned around them, like something enormous taking a breath. The shadows wavered. Emma turned to Jake and the others. This house feeds on people who play with fear, who treat it like entertainment. You came here to manufacture scares, to create fake fear for fake reasons. That's what it hates. Not people who hide their real fear, people who trivialize it. She walked toward Jake, reaching up to touch his suspended hand. The moment her fingers made contact, whatever held him flickered. But we're not playing anymore. The fear is real now. The regret is real. The love I feel for you, even though you betrayed me, is real. And that's something this house can't touch. Jake's eyes widened. Emma, Save it, she said, but without anger. Right now, we survive. Later, we talk. She moved to each of them in turn, touching them, grounding them in reality. With each touch, the invisible bonds weakened. Marcus fell first, landing hard on the stone floor. Then Lily. Daniel. Finally, Jake. The shadows of her parents watched, and slowly, they began to smile. Not the cruel smile of tormentors, but something softer. Proud, even. You learned, her mother's shadow said, the difference between hiding from fear and surviving despite it. We can go? Emma asked. You already left. Her father's shadow replied. The moment you stopped pretending you weren't afraid and started being afraid for the right reasons. Love, protection, survival, those are real, those matter. The shadows dissolved like smoke and wind. The basement began to change, walls growing lighter, the oppressive cold lifting. Emma helped Jake to his feet, and together, the five of them stumbled toward the stairs. Behind them, they could hear the house settling, not attacking anymore, just waiting for the next group of people who would come seeking manufactured thrills, the next ones who would play games with things that demanded respect. They burst out of the front door just as the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Halloween morning. Emma had survived her boyfriend's elaborate prank, a malevolent haunted house, and a confrontation with her deepest fears. She turned to look at Jake. He looked broken, ashamed, desperate for forgiveness. The others stood nearby, equally shattered. We're going to have a very long conversation, Emma said. About trust, about boundaries, about the fact that you all conspired to terrorize me. I know, Jake whispered. I'm so sorry. I don't even know what I thought. But first, Emma continued, pulling out her phone to call for help. We're going to get Rachel out of there, and then we're going to make sure nobody ever goes in that house again. As they waited for the police, Marcus looked back at Ravencroft Manor. Do you think it will happen to others? That the house will? Yes, Emma said simply. That house has been feeding on pretenders for decades. It'll keep feeding until someone burns it to the ground. But that's not our problem today. Today, we just need to survive what we learned about ourselves. The sun climbed higher, burning away the shadows. But none of them would forget what those shadows had shown them. The truth beneath the masks they all wore. The fear they'd all been pretending didn't exist. Sometimes, Emma thought, the scariest thing isn't what's hiding in the dark. It's what's hiding inside yourself, waiting for the right moment to break free. 3 weeks after that Halloween night, Emma stood in front of Ravencroft Manor one last time. The authorities had finally agreed to condemn the building. Demolition was scheduled for next month. It wouldn't stop the darkness entirely. Some things can't be destroyed with bulldozers and wrecking balls, but it would remove the beacon that drew people seeking cheap thrills. Rachel had spent a week in the hospital, recovering from what the doctors called severe psychological trauma. She didn't speak about what happened in that children's bedroom, and Emma didn't push. Some experiences can't be translated into words. Marcus had deleted every piece of footage from that night, every blueprint, every plan. He'd even wiped his computer's hard drive 3 times to make sure nothing remained. Some stories shouldn't be told, he'd said. Some things shouldn't be remembered. Lily and Daniel had left town entirely. Last Emma heard, they were somewhere in California, trying to forget there was ever a place called Ravencroft Manor. Emma didn't blame them. Everyone processes trauma differently, and Jake had been the most changed by that night. The cocky confidence that had defined him was gone, replaced by something quieter, more genuine. He'd spent hours apologizing, explaining, trying to make Emma understand why he'd thought the prank was a good idea. In the end, they'd broken up, not because Emma couldn't forgive him, but because they'd both realized that their relationship had been built partially on pretense. He'd pretended to be fearless for her. She'd pretended not to need anyone for him. Neither of those people were real, but they remained friends. Good friends. The kind of friends forged in the fires of shared trauma and hard truths. Emma learned something important that night. Fear isn't the enemy. Denying fear is. Running from it, hiding it, pretending it doesn't exist. That's what gives it power. True courage isn't the absence of fear. It's looking your fear in the face and choosing to act anyway. It's admitting you're terrified and doing what needs to be done despite the terror clawing at your insides. The masks we wear to protect ourselves from the world sometimes become prisons, and sometimes it takes walking through a literal haunted house to realize that the scariest haunting is the one we inflict on ourselves. As Emma walked away from Ravencroft Manor for the last time, she didn't look back. Not because she wasn't afraid, she was terrified of what that house represented, what it had shown her about herself. But she looked forward instead, toward a future where she could be afraid and be honest about it, where she could be vulnerable without being broken, where she could face her demons instead of pretending they didn't exist. That, she realized, was what it meant to truly survive. So here's my question for you. What are you pretending about? What masks are you wearing that have started to feel more real than your actual face? We all do it. Hide parts of ourselves we think the world won't accept. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take off the mask, even when it's terrifying. This story might be fiction, but the psychology behind it is real. The fear of being truly seen. The games we play to avoid confronting what scares us. The price we pay for pretending everything's fine when it's not. If this story got under your skin, if it made you think, or if it scared you in just the right way, hit that subscribe button. I've got more stories like this coming. Tales that blend horror with truth, that make you question yourself even as they entertain you. And drop a comment telling me what topic you want covered next. Real hauntings? Psychological thrillers? Urban legends that turned out to be true? Your suggestions shape this channel, and I read every single one. Let's explore the darkness together, one story at a time. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay brave, and remember, sometimes the scariest thing you can do is be honest about what scares you. Until next time.